Hey guys, my name is Jonathan Reich. I'm a licensed CPA in the state of Louisiana, and part of my job is cleaning up after small business clients who don't know what they didn't know and some of the issues that they've run into and how to prevent those issues in the future. So, today I want to talk to y'all about some of those small business accounting issues and pain points that might get overlooked and how to solve them. And today I want to do that using Puzzle just because I've been really happy with their platform. I think they were a platform that was made by accountants for accountants that can be understood by small business owners. And so I've been pretty impressed with them. So I want to go ahead and give them a spin and talk about how some of the things that business owners do, they may not realize there's consequences for those actions, or they may not realize that things need to be done differently. So the first one I want to talk about is a pretty technical accounting issue. It's revenue recognition. Most small business owners, for whatever reason, seem to think that cash coming in the door, hitting the bank account so you can now spend it to pay your employees, pay your bills, or keep a little profit for yourself counts as revenue. And that's just not the case. Revenue recognition is difficult for a lot of non-accountants to kind of wrap their head around, and that's okay. Puzzle does a really good job of helping prevent that. So a good example is, like, let's say I'm doing a construction project and it's going to cost me $500,000 to do the project, and I'm going to bill the client $1,000,000. Well, if I get 1/3 of the way through it and I billed the client $800,000, I'm not allowed to recognize a good portion of 800,000 because I have not yet put my costs that I expect to put into the project. Basically, I'm overbilled. It's a liability. I have not earned that money. That money is a liability to my business. Yes, I can spend it. Yes, I can do whatever, but I need to recognize that liability at the end of the month so that I'm giving accurate financials. And so, Puzzle, in my opinion, is set up really well to help folks who run businesses that have like subscription-based income or are doing things like software as a service, because it pairs really well with Stripe. And so whenever you pair Stripe and Puzzle together, you can sync and integrate those two systems to showcase, okay, here's my different revenue streams. This is maybe from training. This is from income associated with my software as a service. Maybe I'm Bill Gates and I'm subscribing everyone to Microsoft Excel and Outlook, whatever. And then this portion is from due upon receipt of closing the contract. And so Stripe is going to help integrate all those and make sure that Puzzle has the appropriate tables and is keying things to where it needs to be. Now, there is going to be a little bit of setup. It doesn't just automatically do these things. You're going to have to do your mapping. You're going to have to set up your chart of accounts, make sure your subledgers are where they're supposed to be. You're going to need to check the logic and set your allocations and things like that. But once you kind of get through the brunt of it, you won't have to have as many Excel spreadsheets showcasing, okay, this is what we can have count as income for the month. This is what needs to be deferred. This is what's a liability, stuff like that. So it does a really good job of that, and that's due to its Stripe integration. Some of the other problems that I see small business owners is, well, the amount of cash I have in my account is a key performance indicator. I had more than I had last month, so I must be doing really well. That's not the case. An issue that I see with that is, what if you just haven't paid your bills in 45 days? What if a big check that you sent to a large vendor got lost in the mail and they just haven't cashed it? Cash is not a KPI. What you're selling, what its gross margin is, that is what is the KPI. How many units are you moving? So, and then what are you making on each unit? And so defining your cost of goods sold is going to help make sure that you are invoicing for your services the correct amount, as well as keeping some in your pocket for overhead expenses, things like that. So where Puzzle leans into this is you can set up your profit and loss to be pretty granular within the system. You can set up, like, let's say, once again, I'm leaning on that construction company example. If I'm running a construction company, how much of my cost of goods, direct cost of goods sold, was labor? How much of it was timber for framing or formwork for concrete? How much of it was steel if I'm in the concrete industry, or for trusses if I'm erecting a building? You can make that cost of goods sold as granular as you need it to be to ensure that you have accurate tags on all your costs so you can see how your business is performing. Puzzle does a really good job of that. And then you can also track product by product tier. if you're implementing any type of tagging or anything like that within the system, departments, stuff like that. Another place that I think Puzzle does a really good job of really just kind of throwing its weight around is a relatively new one, and how research and development costs are associated with profit and loss and balance sheet accounts. So without getting too technical, basically after 2022, the law shifted from you can no longer just expense research and development. So you had all these companies that were just throwing tons and tons of cash into research and development to move their bottom line so that they could pay less in income taxes. And then later, basically they're deferring that revenue because eventually that product would come to market and they would be able to sell it. Now R&D has to be capitalized and then depreciated or amortized over time. And so Puzzle can kind of help with that. One, like I mentioned earlier, Puzzle is really set to be a software as a service, in my opinion. Like if you have a lot of recurring revenue, you're going to be doing a ton of R&D, building your product, stuff like that. So you're going to have engineering salaries, you're going to have sales folks salaries, stuff like that that's tied into that R&D cost. Puzzle does a good job of allowing you to track salary expense across the different departments. So you can track what your back office is, you can track what engineering is, you can track management, you can track sales, stuff like that. And so that's going to allow you to track and see what portion of that was R&D, what portion of that was day-to-day, what portion of that needs to be allocated to this project, things like that. So it really is helpful because you can also segregate between R&D and maintenance expense if you set your profit and loss up in those expense accounts with enough granularity. That is something that I think a lot of small businesses who are in the game of basically throwing a ton of money at a project, hoping to develop a solution, I think Puzzle would do a really good job of helping to avoid that surprise income tax moment that you may get at the end of the year after you talk to your tax CPA. And in a similar vein, you're going to need to, if you are kind of in that industry and you're using this as a platform for your accounting, you're going to need to capitalize your software and implementation costs as well. I think that's also a accounting issue that a lot of small businesses just say, it's an expense, write it off this year, so long, we're glad that we were able to reduce our taxable income. It's not the case. Software costs needs to be capitalized, and then you basically expense it over the life of the software, or I think it's 5 to 7 years is what the IRS is. Don't quote me on that though, because this is not a tax software video. These are small business accounting problem videos, so don't make me swear to that. But you are going to need to expense it over time is essentially the key point that I'm trying to get across, that a lot of small businesses don't realize that. So what you would use Puzzle for is it truly an expense? Is it truly a cost? Yes, put it to your profit and loss and expense it. But if you set up your balance sheet correctly within Puzzle, you can set depreciation schedules for things like fixed assets. And you'd be surprised at or how often a lot of accounting softwares don't have fixed asset depreciations. If you know the cost of the software and you know what you put into it and you're done developing it and you need to depreciate it over 5 years, you just set it up as a fixed asset within Puzzle's module and you release it, and then it depreciates every month. And you forget about it, set it and forget it. It's excellent. And I can't tell you how often I have to put together spreadsheets and things like that in order to make it to where your balance sheet and your depreciation expense are where they're supposed to be. It's just, you don't have to do that with Puzzle, which I really appreciate that, because it's just one of those issues that can be solved and then you just forget about it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. One of the final things that I want to talk about with how Puzzle can solve a lot of like these growing pains, pain points, things that, maybe some small business owners didn't even know that they didn't know, is how to close the books. So Puzzle does a really good job of making sure things get where they're supposed to be, essentially, because it has an integrated close checklist within the system. And a lot of platforms, actually most platforms don't. It's kind of, now that I think about it, Puzzle might be the only one that I've actually interacted with that doesn't have an Excel spreadsheet out on a shared drive somewhere for people to put their initials next to. Puzzle has the closed platform, or has the closed checklist within the platform. It's super important because things like cash, AR, AP, payroll, fixed asset, revenue releases, accruals, equity roll forwards, flux analysis, things like that that you would have to remember month over month just live in the system. And so you can assign it to somebody, check into it, get it done, mark it as complete. There you go. Materiality thresholds, you can say, okay, any discrepancies over a couple $1,000, we need to go back and flag. And then everything is closed timely, which takes a ton of stress off your shoulders if you're trying to get these financials out to like the board or a set of investors or the bank. It's a lot more fluid if you're not struggling to get these books closed month over month, and you're able to look at any flux analysis to say, well, why did our payroll expense, go up by 30% this month? Oh, we hired, a ton of new employees. And so once those books are closed, you then have accurate financials that you can do look backs on and compare to the prior months, prior periods, prior year. And that's pivotal and super important information that as a small business owner, you're going to need. But if you don't know to use the closed checklist to push everything through fluidly, then you'll never get there and you'll never be able to make those decisions based on good data. So there's a ton of other things that I could cover today, guys. Things like payroll, independent contractors, W-2, who needs a 1099, how do we bill, things like that, cash controls. But these are some of the more serious issues that I see that can materially misstate financials. And I think Puzzle as a platform helps to prevent that. It does a really good job of, kind of nipping that in the bud before it becomes an issue and spirals out of control. So I really want to give props to the Puzzle team, because I can tell that the platform was made by accountants for accountants to avoid issues like this. So overall, really happy with it. Check it out, guys, if you're thinking about making a switch. It's just a great platform. Thanks for watching.